Hey, friends, welcome to the PR Bunker podcast. As you all know, I interview folks from all walks of life, backgrounds, mostly around communications. And as you all know, I do work in the mission-driven space. And I forget how long ago, but months ago, I met my friend here you see on the screen, Lea Lowery, executive director and co-founder of the Climate Initiative, doing incredible work. Up in Maine, we talked, had some conversations. I heard the story, and I said to her, I need to have you on my podcast and hear the story. So, Leia, thanks for being here. Thanks for joining us on the PR Bunker podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, I always start with this question. Like, how'd you get here? Clearly, it's a long story, and it's a long-winded kind of thing, but, like, talk about your career. Clearly, you didn't wake up one day and say, I'm going to start this thing. Tell us the story.
Totally by accident, which I think most people in their careers end up that way. I actually started out, I always like to say this, I started out in music and very quickly shifted to that trajectory. But I started out in my career in teaching, and I taught agriculture and construction and shop and all of that kind of stuff down south, and got moved to Maine, and they didn't have that here. So I was sort of at a loss for what to do. And at the time, a bunch of people had sent me this ad for the Kennebunkport Conservation Trust. And I started teaching young kids, which kindergartners scare me a little bit, but I did it anyway. But I taught, I always say taught 0 to 104, but we didn't turn you away if you were 105. And just to learn to love the landscape and learn to love each other and learn their history, their shared history. And in that process, we started a class called the Gulf of Maine Field Studies. And that class was started because the high schoolers that I was seeing that I had taught all the way up through, they were coming back and they were dropping out of environmental science classes. And we thought, you can't do that. We need you right now more than ever. And so we started talking to them and asked them, why are you dropping out? What's the problem? And they said, well, environmental studies is really depressing because we hear about all these problems all over the world and there's nothing we can do about it. And so they were just kind of throwing their hands up and saying, screw it, I can't do anything about this. And so we decided to create a class that was a little bit different and where we took the landscape they lived on and said, okay, here's something tangible that you have access to. What kind of changes can we make? So we taught them about things that were happening in their own landscape. And they made some huge changes, and our community was really engaged and involved, and we started having these intergenerational conversations that were just fantastic. From that, a funder came to us and said, hey, you should take this national. We kind of laughed, but we tried it, and we got our funding in January of 2020, which was a great time to try and spread an in-person program because March, the whole world shut down.
Wow.
But then we pivoted very quickly and made our program kind of short modules that were online, and it just kind of, as they say, went viral.
Wow.
So from
Incredible.
our little town in Kennebunkport to all over.
So clearly, what started locally in Kennebunkport, which is a beautiful community to visit. I don't care if it's cold, summertime, if you're around New England or if you're not, feel free to visit Kennebunkport. Great restaurants, great scene up there. But you talked about taking this really simple concept, tackling a very big problem in the little corner of Maine in Kennebunkport. And how does that seed grow? Clearly, you need to get people to support your organization through a variety of things. How do you reach people? Because this podcast is all about communications and outreach and that sort of stuff. So how do you take this message and get people out? And what does that look like in terms of reaching people, getting folks to support you, and growing this thing at that national level as we talked about?
Yeah, so we started out with really reaching out directly to educators. Going through school systems is really, really hard. And so we wanted to get people who are already passionate about this, but just didn't have this resources. And frankly, educators don't get taught any of this stuff in their pre-service. So while there's this push sometimes to bring this into the classroom, they don't really have the resources or the necessary knowledge, or they feel not confident enough to do it. So we decided that we would provide these resources, go straight to educators who really wanted to do this. And we found that there was a huge market for that. So we had a lot of educators coming to us and saying, yeah, we want to know more. We want to know how we can do this in our classrooms. My passion is really about creating interconnected and resilient communities and intergenerational conversations. I always call it rebuilding the front porch of our communities because that's what I'm passionate about.
Love it.
And yeah, I mean, we're so nomadic now, right? We don't necessarily know our neighbors. We don't necessarily grow up in the same place that our parents or our grandparents did. Some of us are lucky to, but many of us don't. So really creating those connections to tether students to their communities and make them feel heard and have agency, but also just to kind of connect community members, right? Because, the Surgeon General says we have a loneliness epidemic, and it's true. Most of us feel a little bit kind of like we don't necessarily belong in
Hmm.
our communities or don't feel connected. So we went straight to educators and started providing them the resources that they needed. And their whole module that they do, that we created for them, involves integrating the community into their classrooms. So doing interviews with longtime residents or town leaders or community leaders, city leaders, and then designing an action project that is meaningful to their community. And so the students go out into the community and they're integrated with the community to do these action projects. And then we have one program that is just direct to youth. So if there isn't a teacher that wants to do this kind of thing, they can actually create these action projects by finding community partners. So when you say, how can people get involved or how can people help? That's one great way. If you want to partner, if you work with an organization that wants to partner with young people on creating some kind of really great sustainable or resiliency project in your community or something that your community needs and they want to bring it to the town, that's a great way.
That's great.
Of course, as most people say, it's, of your, anything that you can give of your treasure is great. Of course, we're trying to run this program, but also of your talent. If you have something that
Absolutely.
you're really talented and know about, or if you just want to get involved in some way, give us a contact and we can figure out how to do that. But we have educators in all 50 states and in 44 countries and are serving over 500,000 youth now.
That's great. Well, one of the things I love about the story is the fact that it did grow like a little plant that was, you put in the ground and you watered it, and an idea to a concept to a thing to organization, not to this national, program you've rolled out. Uh, clearly climate is a massive macro issue, and it can be politicized. We won't even get into that. One of the things I love to do as a communicator in so many public relations is sort of tell the macro through the micro. So you kind of alluded to that a little bit, how you're working with teachers. When, say I'm a donor and I'm like, I'm all on board in this. I've got a fairly hefty check I want to write. I want to understand more about the impact you've made. Oftentimes impacts with nonprofits are told through impact stories. I'm sure you're probably chock full of like these little tiny anecdotes. Give us an anecdote. Give us a little bit of the micro of things that kind of prove out the point you just made to really kind of bring the story to life for us.
Yeah, absolutely. We have an action map actually that shows all the projects that have been turned into us. It's not all the teachers that we've served, but it's teachers who have chosen to tell us their story. And we're really trying to collect more of those. But we have like a teacher in Seattle that their community problem was really food insecurity. And so they learned about regenerative agriculture through our learning lab. And then the students designed a community garden that they donate all of the food to the food insecure. And that was their action project. And then you want to talk about really serving a community need and connecting our food systems to what's happening around us that was fantastic. Another one in Kentucky, this was middle schoolers. The kids decided that they wanted to have solar panels charge their computers every night at the school. We were here in the middle of coal country and they got it passed. They went and petitioned and went to the superintendent. They did a whole
Wow.
presentation. The class did a presentation and they got solar panels for all the schools to charge the computers at night. They also did a wonderful fast fashion thing. So they were studying the kind of the climate impacts of fast fashion, and they collected a bunch of clothes. They had a sale in their cafeteria. They had information on how to repair clothes and that kind of thing so that people knew.
Incredible.
And they also had information about fast fashion and why it's a problem. And then at the end, they donated all the clothes that were left to a women's shelter and to a homeless shelter. So again, connecting that community need with information so people understand why it's impactful to them and why they should care.
That's
Because
great.
most of us are looking at this on this global scale. You're right. And it's a huge mountain. And I always say, like we got to link arms together to climb that mountain. We can't just be one person at a time.
Yeah. Years ago when I was a kid, my old man would take us hiking and we'd be like complaining about it. He'd be like, it's just one section of the trail at a time, boys. And we just and that's what this is about, right? It's about you and multiple trails Seattle, Boston, whatever, it doesn't matter. I mean, all these little anecdotes kind of roll up to the macros. Clearly, this idea, and the work that you're doing must make you proud. I mean, this is kind of incredible work to see these little middle school kids come up with this thing. But there's it's scalable, and you have scale. But like, what's next? Clearly, you need fundraising. So if you got some bucks out there looking to drop a couple $1,000,000 on these folks, please do so. Like today, passionate about getting involved, please do that. But like, what's next? I mean, clearly somebody with your caliber and talent and thought process and empathy toward an issue doesn't plant the seed and just let the thing grow. You're probably planting multiple seeds and looking at other things. So, current initiatives you want to share, stuff that's pie in the sky, but you're looking towards. I mean, what's next for the organization?
Yeah, I think one thing we'd love to be able to give small grants and then have a summit where the students come in and they're able to like really present what they've done in their different communities. They can connect to each other, figure out new ways to inspire each other, and we can give them something to really continue those projects because most of this is just teachers trying to do it on their own. And so if we can provide any kind of funding for that, we want to have that kind of funding in our system that we can then re-grant it out. So that's one thing that we're really looking to do. And then another thing is really working with pre-service educators because nobody's really doing that. Not a lot of people are doing that. You think about educators once they're already matured and into the classroom, but how great would it be if they know what is going on and how to teach it and how to really do it effectively with community engagement and place-based learning? If we can teach that when they're just starting out and they're passionate and they have all the dreams in the world and then nothing's going to stop them, that would be amazing. So I
Sure.
think pre-service is huge and then really expanding our international reach.
Got it. Love that. So what do you love about the work from a personal perspective?
I love seeing the connections between adults and youth. It's such a rarity. And I think in the past, those kinds of things happened through different organizations or churches or things like that. And we all know, like, not as many people are doing a lot of that stuff. And we live in a really fast paced world. But when you get these kids in a room with adults, the kids just rise to the occasion. They lead, they can talk, they can listen. And then they're not political, right? They're apolitical beings, really, in our minds. Even if they are political, we don't see them that way. And I always say if I start a conversation and I walk into a room, somebody's going to size me up the way I look, the way I talk,
Mm-hmm.
where I'm from, what I do for a living. They can
Mm-hmm.
decide what I'm going to say before I even open my mouth. And it either opens or shuts down the conversation before it starts. But with students, they can do this in this way that just opens up the community. And we've seen it happen where community members are blown away by these youth, and you've seen them come to tears in conversations and just say, I had no idea how much this meant to you, or these kids are my hope and passion now because we need to do better and we need to do it together. And that
That's
to
great.
me is creating community.
That's great. Clearly, the work inspires the work, right? And you had an idea which sparked this whole thing. But what are the other sort of things that sort of circle your life that inspire this mission you've carried? You're carrying this flag through this battlefield that's politicized and in the media, and you're like, I see the faces of the kids. Maybe it's the kids that. So what are those like intangible things that just inspire you to like get up on the tough days when you know it's going to be hard and you're looking for funding and you're asking and you're just trying to banging your head against this brick wall that's behind me? Now, why do you get up every day to put the shoes on, put the boots on, and get to work? What inspires you?
What inspires me is the work inspires me, really. It's all of these people who feel like they're siloed and separate and that they don't have any power, and seeing them realize that they do when they interconnect and lighting those little grassroots fires everywhere. That's what gets me up in the morning. I was lucky enough. My dad is from Southwest Virginia, and I was lucky enough to have that carport where I learned my family history. And I always joke that I learned the soundtrack to my life because it's where I learned all the music I listen to now. And I think I always felt this really strong connection to community. And that's a really where my dad is from is a really poor community. It's struggling. And I just the more that I can connect people in their communities to serve themselves, to do what they need to do, what they see is right. It's that bottom up movement and really watering the ground so that they can grow. To me, they're doing the work. And that just fills my heart to see it happen and to see these small communities or cities or whatever taking on these projects and doing it because they want to make their communities better and they want to work together in a better way.
Love that. Yeah, I call that kind of feeling that professional equity. Now, we all get paid to do a job, but there's just this equity that you get out of working with mission-driven organizations, doing the work that you do, right? Seeing the faces of the kids or the ideas or just the spark that they've created that turned into something that's impacting the environment in a positive way or helping other people. So that's fantastic. So I always throw a couple like curveball questions at people that I interview. So, but it's fun. It's all fun. If you weren't doing this and somebody else was doing this job, what would you do? For me, before you answer the question, like I always say a couple things: middle inside linebacker for the New England Patriots, or the guy that created Amazon, right? But like, what else are you passionate about other than your obviously Kennebunkport and home and your family in this organization? What's your personal passions, and what would you be doing if you weren't doing what you're doing now?
One of two things. I could say probably two things, right? So one of them would probably be I would love to have like a travel blog. I love to travel. I love to meet new people and I love to meet like local people. I'm not somebody who wants to go to the big touristy place. I want to go to the small place and sit at the restaurant where people wonder who you are and talk to you. And I would love to do that. Like to me, that would be an ideal job. But I've always had a passion for agriculture. That was my major and my master's. So I think I would probably have a small hobby farm and just sort of do my thing. I don't know. It's
Love
one of the
that.
two.
Plenty of space up there in Kennebunkport.
Yep.
Get farming, as they'd say. What do you love about Kennebunkport? For those that are listening, watching, and haven't been there before, how would you describe that little quaint New England town?
So when we moved here, I remember driving through Cape Porpoise and just the docks and the fishermen and the lighthouse. Just, I absolutely went, oh yeah, no, this is my small town. It's just beautiful. And then I was lucky enough to work for the Conservation Trust here. So I got to know the history really, really well and the trails. And I think there's just a little bit of everything. You got a little bit of ocean, you got some food, you got some woods, you've got a little bit of everything other than the mountains. I miss the White Mountains.
A quick drive away. Quick drive away. It's fine. Quick drive away. Excellent. Well, where can people learn more about your organization? How can they support Time, Talent, Treasure? Where can we send people?
So you can come to our website, which is just theclimateinitiative.org. Or you can email me, which is just Leia at theclimateinitiative.org, Leia. And then we have Instagram, which is the_climate initiative, and Facebook, we are the Climate Initiative. We're also on LinkedIn, so you can find us there. And yeah, follow us, see what we're doing, get in touch.
Love that. And what's the sort of the last sort of call to action you'd like to leave the audience that listens to this podcast or people coming like what's the one thing you want to put a pin on that people can take away from this conversation and they can carry part of that flag for you moving forward? What's that pin?
That pin is no one's coming. No one's coming. And it's up to us to work together to solve our community issues. No one's coming to solve it for us. And if we all just remember that and remember that we care about our neighbors, we care about the same things. We all have the same thing we care about. We want safe streets. We want healthy air. We want clean drinking water. We want food on our table and shelter over our head. So there's a whole lot more that combines and unites us than divides us. And so no one's coming and we got to fight the fight.
Love that. Love that. Should be on a t-shirt somewhere. Love it. Love it. Love it. Leia, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you today. Love the story. Love the story about the kids and the charging of the charging stations and the solar panels. I mean, just incredible work that's reaching well beyond Main Street in Kennebunkport, which is incredible. So that little plant the seed you planted, I should say, has grown exponentially. I'm looking forward to seeing that forest grow beyond your reasonable doubt. But I appreciate you being here today on the PR Bunker.
Thank you so much, Don. I really appreciate you having me.
Thanks for joining me on the PR Bunker podcast. As you can tell, I'm out of the bunker today and upstairs in the house. My wife has already decorated for the fall. It's September. People are back to school. People are back to the grind, if you will. We've got a bit of a sprint here between now and the end of the year. Q4 is here. So what are you doing to get your business going and close deals meet people, build relationships, so it sets you up for a fantastic end of 2025 and a heck of a start for 26. I can't believe we're talking about 2026. But thanks again to Leia and the team over at the Climate Initiative for joining me today on the PR Bunker podcast. Hope you learned a couple things about the organization, what they do, and how to support it. But please feel free to share this. It's a wonderful mission. I'd love to get them some support however we can. Visit their website, share this podcast, just talk about it. If you're in education or know a teacher or in education, share this. Let people know that this wonderful organization is out there for them to help young people understand how they can impact the climate today, tomorrow, and in the future. So thanks again for joining the PR Bunker podcast. To get more of these episodes, head over to Spotify or just visit prbunker.com. And of course, if you ever need public relations help, or if you're a nonprofit that needs your story to be told, let me know. Happy to help. Thanks for joining.